I think the only difference between us three is Boise. Let me just say about Boise. I cannot factor what they did last year into what they're doing this year. And I know you knocked Auburn for their defense. If Boise played Auburn's schedule, I guarantee you they'd be worse than the 64th ranked defense in the country. Auburn, week in and week out, they're playing some of the best offenses in the country, like Arkansas. They're going to play one of the best defenses in the country this weekend in LSU. And until they grind it out, I just can't legitimize putting Boise that high.
Well, I am giving Boise State for credit what they did last year because they returned 20 starters. It's basically the exact same team. This year they have the top offense or top defense in the country right now. Their offense ranks number 4 in the country. They're the only team who has a top 5 offense and defense. They were well balanced. They have a lot of talent on that team. They've beat a lot of good teams in the past few years, and they returned the exact same team they had last year.
I think what's interesting about this whole scenario is I do factor in the returning starters. I think that's very important, and you need
even
to look
7 games into the season.
Yeah, you need to look at the returning starters but I don't necessarily factor in all the wins from a year ago because other teams who have lost in the SEC, in the Big Ten, in the Pac-10 don't have the luxury of going back a year ago and saying, oh, we had a big 2 or 3 big wins last year. That doesn't factor into them this year. Boise has the advantage of being able to say, yep, we've won some big games, like you said, against Oregon and TCU the last 2 seasons, but other teams don't get to do that. They don't get to say we beat these big teams. And then Boise State also has the advantage of playing in the WAC, where they're not challenged on a week-by-week basis. We were thinking Nevada might be a tough challenge, and they may still be, but Nevada going on the road and losing to Hawaii, Boise now has no ranked teams left on their schedule. Most of the teams that they play the rest of the season are at the bottom of the FBS. So I just don't think Boise State deserves to be maybe at the 2 spot. And as you said, Jake, I agree with you at 2. Maybe you can justify 2 now. But as the season goes on and they continue to play that very poor schedule, they will drop down. The only way they play for that national championship is if all the other teams playing in the far superior conferences and playing far tougher schedules lose. That's the only way Boise State gets a shot.
Or even have like 2 losses. I mean, because I think Alabama, look where they are. They're in the lower part of the top 10. But if they beat teams like Auburn, they're going to just go up in the polls because of that strength of schedule. And Boise, we looked at the mock BCS a week ago. They were number 1. You add in 1 game versus San Jose State. They are so bad, it brought them down to the computers because San Jose State is so bad. San Jose State lost to an FCS team in UC Davis, and they are an awful football team. I mean, it's just, like, I think Boise State, like you said, I think they could go on a neutral field and compete with almost every team in college football. But the fact of the matter is, if Ohio State, teams like that, played their schedule, there'd be no, I mean, they would do the same thing. They would have the best offense in college football. Ohio State would have the best defense in college football. If week in, week out, they played the teams in the WAC. I know we just have a difference of philosophy on this, but I think it's a good debate, though.
Well, and again, that's what makes it so hard is because Boise State, we know they are a team that can compete with everyone in the top 10, but we don't see that reflected in the schedule they play compared to teams in the SEC and the Big Ten, Pac-10.
And for Boise State to be in the top 2 at the end of the season, they are going to need a lot of help. As of now, I have Oklahoma, Auburn, LSU, Michigan State all behind them. They're all undefeated teams from BCS conferences. If that remains, there's no way Boise State's going to be in the top 2, maybe not even in the top 5. They need a lot of help. A 1-loss Alabama team, a 1-loss Ohio State team, I think gets ahead of Boise State. But as of now, I have them at number 2. I think they deserve to be there. They can beat anyone in the country. It's just too bad their schedule is probably going to not let them be in the national championship.
Yeah, and I love Boise's my punching bag. I love talking about Boise. Let me just name the last 3 teams Boise State's played: New Mexico State, Toledo, San Jose State. Can any of you guys name a player on any of those teams?
Matt LaSecla is the quarterback for San Jose State.
Yeah, but I mean, literally. I mean, come on. Louisiana Tech next week.
That's the only one.
They get to go to Ruston, Louisiana to play Louisiana Tech. Idaho, Hawaii after that, and some uneducated college football fans might look at Hawaii and be like, oh, that's a good team. Yeah, Hawaii has been irrelevant since Cole Brennan played there, and he's not there anymore. June Jones is not there anymore. Hawaii is not what they used to be. And like the WAC, I mean, we saw Nevada go on the road to lose to Hawaii. I mean, this is not a good football conference. And, I mean, I would love, if Boise State was in the Pac-10, I would love to put them in the national title game if they ran the table, especially with an out-of-conference win like Virginia Tech. But the fact is they play in the WAC. And at least Utah realized that we want to compete for national championships. So they're going to the Pac-10 now. I don't know if that was logistically possible for Boise, but that's the world we live in. I mean, week in, week out, look at Ohio State going on the road last week, losing to Wisconsin. They have a grind of a football schedule. Look at Iowa this month of October, Penn State, at Michigan, Wisconsin, Michigan State. Boise does not have a gauntlet like that. I mean, we could be a great team and still lose one of those games because that grind week in, week out, it's just so hard to get through that.
The only problem I have with that argument is it's purely hypothetical. I think Boise State does have one of the top 5 teams in the country just by how you evaluate them with who they have played overall. When you see them against Virginia Tech and how they handled that, when you see them against Oregon last year, they have the
last
team.
Year,
I know, but it's the same
you can't
team,
take last year.
and that's the same.
Ohio
team that won
State
the
beat
Pac-10
Oregon last year. Ohio State beat Oregon last year and did it more impressively. I mean, so should we put Ohio State ahead of Boise? I mean,
all I'm saying is Boise has not lost a game in about 2 years.
Right. No, and you and I are in agreement with this. I think Boise State can compete with anybody, but again, we have to go with the schedule and what it's reflected in that schedule, and they just
I hypothetically think that they could run the table in the Big Ten, but we don't know that.
Yes, we don't.
Boise State's going to get penalized for it. I don't think they're going to end up at the national championship, but as of now, I have them at number 2, and if some things play out right, I might have them at number 2 at the end of the year.
It'll be interesting, especially in the SEC, because the SEC West is just killer right now. Like, we look at our top 5, we all had LSU and Auburn. One of those teams is losing this weekend. You look at Alabama's going to have to play Auburn again eventually. And LSU, I believe, plays Auburn again here down the road. I mean, excuse me, LSU plays Alabama down the road. So, I mean, this is going to be tough. If these teams all have 2 losses at the end of the year, then you can't put one of those teams in the national title game. I know what happened with LSU a few years ago, but I just don't see that happening this year, especially with teams like TCU, Utah, Boise possibly trying to get into the picture, especially with the Big Ten as good as it is. Maybe one lost Big Ten team gets in. It's just going to be really interesting to see what happens down the stretch. And we love debating college football. That's what makes it so great. I don't think there's a sport that creates more debate than college football, and partly due to the bowl system that we have, but that's the system we have, and that's why we love college football. But let's talk about some games. We can put the hypothetical stuff aside because this is actual stuff that's going to be taking place on the field this weekend, and we both talked about LSU and Auburn. As at number 6 LSU goes to number 4 Auburn. Auburn coming off a 65-43 win over Arkansas. Jake, who do you like in this one?
Well, last week I picked Arkansas because I thought they had a defense. Obviously, I was really wrong about that. But this week, LSU has the number 1 defense in the SEC. Auburn has the number 1 offense in the SEC. I normally like to take the defense, but this week I'm going to take the team that has the best athlete on the field, and that is Cam Newton. He's going to build up his Heisman talk even more after this week. Auburn wins at home.
That's right. That's why I picked Auburn last week.
Yeah, you did.
I love Auburn. I love this team. Cam Newton, you take a look what he's done. He leads the SEC in rushing with 860 yards per game, and also he's an effective passer. He actually leads the SEC in passing efficiency. I like this offense. I like Auburn. I'm usually a guy who picks teams with defense, but Auburn has just been way too explosive in the games at Jordan-Hare. Mike, what do you got?
I'm actually picking Auburn this week as well. I think what's going to be interesting is LSU's going to stack the box against Auburn and make Cameron Newton beat them with his arm. So Cameron Newton's going to be looking down the field to Terrell Zachary and Darvin Adams, the big play wide receivers, making big plays in this game. So I like Auburn to win this game because LSU on offense is anemic at times. They're very off and on. There's still the question marks with Jarrett Lee and Jordan Jefferson at the quarterback position. Can they find a mixture of playing both of them and successful? I don't know if they can do that against Auburn. So I think ultimately Auburn makes this game more of a shootout, and LSU just can't keep up through the duration of 4 quarters. So I like Auburn to win this game. But I think LSU is going to put on a good performance.
That might be the game of the weekend right there. That game is an afternoon game and the night game on Saturday on ABC. Number 1 Oklahoma taking on number 11 Missouri. Missouri has not beat Oklahoma since 1998. Gary Pinkel has never beaten Oklahoma. Landry Jones, DeMarco Murray, Ryan Broyles, who averages more receptions than any other player per game in college football. I like Oklahoma to win this one. I think it's a close game at Missouri. Mike, who do you like in this one?
Yeah, I like the Sooners as well. You know, you talked about Ryan Broyles, but Kenny Stills, the young freshman, also been very impressive this season. DeMarco Murray carries the ball with tremendous passion and fire. He runs very well, runs with conviction. So I like Oklahoma to win this game. Missouri, they're highly touted defense. They've played Illinois, McNeese State, Colorado, Texas A&M, San Diego State, Miami of Ohio. They haven't played anybody that's tested them. I mean, San Diego State almost went in and beat Missouri. So I think Oklahoma has a big day, really exposes that Missouri defense. Not saying it's a bad defense, but not nearly as good as second in the country in scoring.
Well, College Game Day is going to be at this game. They were at the game last week when Ohio State went to Wisconsin. They were at the game before when Alabama went to South Carolina. Both times the number one team went down on the road. That's why I'm going to pick Missouri. Their offense is led by Blaine Gabbert at quarterback, a high-powered offense, number one in the Big 12 in scoring defense. Oklahoma has been a little inconsistent. They've had one true road game so far. That's at Cincinnati. They only won by 2. They haven't been impressive on the road so far. I'm going with Missouri.
Now for the Hawkeyes, number 15, Iowa will host number 13, Wisconsin in Kinnick Stadium this Saturday. Iowa has won 6 of the last 8 versus Wisconsin. Mike, the battle for the Heartland Trophy is this weekend. Who do you got taking the bull home?
I like Iowa to win this football game. I think this is going to be a battle between Wisconsin's dominant offensive line and Iowa's very good defensive line, one of the best in the country, if not the best in the Big Ten. I think the key here is forcing Scott Tolzien to use his arm to beat Iowa. His career statistics against the Hawkeyes, 0 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. John Clay and James White at Wisconsin have combined for 1,356 yards rushing and 20 touchdowns. If they can continue to run the ball effectively like they did against Ohio State last week, it's going to be tough for Iowa to win this game. Make Scott Tolzien beat you. I think Iowa wins 27-21. Ricky Stanzi, who's second in the nation in passing efficiency, leads the team down in the fourth quarter to get a big win. I like Iowa to win this game at home and send Wisconsin back to Camp Randall with a big L.
I absolutely agree with Mike. This game's going to be one in the trenches. It's the best defensive line in the Big Ten versus the best offensive line in the Big Ten. I think Iowa comes out on top, led by Ricky Stanzi, leading the Big Ten in passing efficiency. We put up at least 30 points. Iowa wins 31-24.
Wisconsin will lose to Iowa this weekend. I like the Hawkeyes 24-21. Wisconsin, big W on the helmet, big L on the scoreboard. For Mike Rabin and Jake Burgers, I'm Alex Salzma. Good night and go Hawks.
Which are you more excited about?
Tim Brewster.
It's a sad day in my life.
I wanted Bruce.
Honestly, miss him. I'm gonna miss him.
I was hoping we would get to send him out.
Me too. I wanted to send him out
TCF
with
Bank
a
with like
spanking.
20,000 Hawkeye
Oh, dude.
fans.
I know.